Stop me if you have heard this one before. The global economy is on the brink of collapse. Panic is setting in on the stock exchanges, and nations mobilize their navies to fight a war over bird excrement. It sounds like a joke, but in the mid-19th century, this was not a punchline. It was a matter of life and death. You might look at the financial systems we have today, our central banks, our supply chains, our risk management algorithms, and think they are built on logic and digital code. But what if I told you that the modern architecture of financial certainty, the very idea that we can insure ourselves against disaster, was actually forged in a desperate, frantic scramble for piles of poop on a rock in the Pacific Ocean? I know. You clicked this video because the title sounds ridiculous. You are thinking, there is no way people fought and died over bird droppings. But this isn't a joke. This is the Chincha Islands War. It is the only war in history fought entirely over fertilizer. And here is the scary part. At the time, this made perfect financial sense. This is the story of how the global economy became so addicted to a single, disgusting commodity that we nearly blew up the world order just to control it. To understand this war, you have to understand the asset class. In the 1840s, the world was running out of food. The soil in Europe and America was exhausted. We had farmed it to death. Nitrogen levels were crashing, and without nitrogen, crops don't grow. It was a slow-motion apocalypse. Enter the guano. For thousands of years, millions of seabirds, mostly cormorants and pelicans, had been nesting on the Chincha Islands off the coast of Peru. Because it almost never rains there, their droppings didn't wash away. They just piled up. We are talking about mountains of excrement, 150 feet high. When scientists realized this stuff was pure nitrogen, it became white gold. Overnight, it became the most valuable commodity on the planet, pound for pound. Imagine if tomorrow we found out that the only thing that could power our smartphones was dust from a specific crater on the moon. What would happen? Panic, mania, and then violence. That is exactly what happened with the bird poop. The price skyrocketed. And since Peru owned the islands, Peru held the monopoly. They held the keys to the world's food supply. And the great powers of the world, they decided they weren't going to pay full price anymore. First came the lawyers. Before the actual shooting started, the United States tried to legalize the theft of bird poop. In 1856, Congress passed the Guano Islands Act. This is a real law. It basically said, if an American citizen sees a rock with bird poop on it, and nobody lives there, it now belongs to the United States. It sounds funny, but it was an aggressive act of foreign policy. The U.S. started claiming islands all over the Pacific. It was a land grab fueled by fertilizer. But while the Americans were using lawyers, the Spanish were preparing their battleships. Spain was broke. They had lost their empire. They owed money to everyone. And they looked at their former colony, Peru, getting rich off this guano. Peru wasn't just selling the guano. They were borrowing against it. The entire Peruvian economy was leveraged on bird droppings. Spain realized something terrifyingly simple. If they seized the islands, they seized the collateral. It is the geopolitical equivalent of a bank sending a repo man to take your car. Except the car is an island, and the repo man is an armored frigate with 40 cannons. In April 1864, the Spanish fleet made their move. They didn't invade the mainland. They went straight for the money. They seized the Chincha Islands. They raised the Spanish flag over the guano piles. The message was clear. We don't want your country. We want your poop. This triggered a continental crisis. Peru couldn't export the fertilizer, which meant they couldn't pay their debts. The global market panicked. Farmers in England and France stared at their dying crops, wondering if the supply chain was broken forever. Peru, Chile, Ecuador, and Bolivia formed a desperate alliance. They had to fight. This wasn't a skirmish. This was heavy naval warfare. The Spanish fleet blockaded the ports. They threatened to bombard cities. In one famous incident, the Chilean Navy captured a Spanish gunboat. It was such a humiliation that the Spanish admiral, a man named Pareja, committed suicide rather than face the shame. Think about that for a second. An admiral of the Spanish Empire took his own life because he was losing the war for manure. The climax came at the Battle of Callao. The Spanish fleet bombarded the Peruvian port for hours. The Peruvians fired back from shore batteries. Hundreds of men died. Ships were battered. The city was damaged. All of this carnage, all of this fire and smoke for bird droppings. Eventually, Spain realized the cost of the war was higher than the value of the guano they were stealing. They withdrew. The South American allies had won. They kept their islands. But here is the tragedy of this war. They fought for the islands because they thought the bird poop was the ultimate asset. They thought it was the only thing that could save the world from starvation. They were wrong. While these battleships were firing at each other, science was quietly making them all obsolete. A few decades later, two German chemists, Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch, figured out how to synthesize ammonia from the air, artificial nitrogen. Just like that, the monopoly was broken. The white gold became worthless dirt again. The Chincha Islands, which men had died to protect, were abandoned. The massive mining infrastructure was left to rot. The birds took them back. It is easy to laugh at this. The war over bird poop. It sounds like a skit. But ask yourself, what are we doing right now? We are currently in trade wars over microchips. We are positioning navies to protect oil shipping lanes. We are racing to secure lithium for batteries. We convince ourselves that these resources are existential. We tell ourselves that without this specific commodity, our way of life ends. We are willing to deploy fleets and sanction economies to control the modern versions of guano. The lesson of the Chincha Islands War is not about agriculture. It is about value. Value is temporary. The strategic asset that you are willing to kill for today might be worthless tomorrow because of a single technological breakthrough. Spain sent a fleet to die for something that we now make in a factory for pennies. So the next time you feel that panic, that scarcity mindset telling you that there isn't enough to go around, remember the mountains of guano. Remember that the solution to our biggest problems usually isn't found by fighting over a pile of resources. It is found in the laboratory. It is found in innovation. The war is never really about the bird poop. It is about our fear of the future. If you enjoyed this dive into the weirdest conflict in financial history, hit that like button. And I have a question for you. What is the bird poop of our generation? What resource are we fighting over right now that will look ridiculous in 100 years? Let me know in the comments. I will see you in the next video.